Welcome, everybody. This is our hydrogen panel for day 2 at the Baltic and Nordic Energy Summit. We have a very distinguished panel today with 3 experts, Mr. Herkko Plitt from P2X Solutions, a CEO, Matti Malkamäki, CEO of Aurelia Turbines, and Glom Ribron from Marguerite. Welcome, gentlemen. We have lots of topics to cover. We're sort of dancing around the theme of hydrogen. And before we get started, if I could ask you very briefly to introduce yourselves, starting from Herkko, please.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. And it's certainly a privilege to be back in this seminar. Then I've been attending them as a speaker so many times there. Previously, it's been more in the gas sector there, and would be very happy to see all the gas colleagues as well there. But at least we can see virtually then each other here, hopefully. But really, Herkko Plitt is my name there, and I founded P2X Solutions the last fall there. And our aim is really to get the Finnish hydrogen market opened. We already opened the gas market with Baltic Connector and so forth there. So I thought that the next nice challenge would be to open the Finnish hydrogen market there, and we are trying to do that by constructing 20 megawatt a green hydrogen production plant there, and we have also the opportunity to further refuel and make synthetic methane from the capturing CO2 with the hydrogen. My background itself, then, is I've been working more than 25 years in the energy sector in various positions there. So lots of large projects there, many, so to say, CEO positions then, but also background in public sector, being then civil servant in the EU Commission, and as well as in the Finnish Ministry of Employment and Economic Affairs.
Thank you very much. Matti?
Thank you, Laura, and also a pleasure to be here. To start with a little bit like an excuse, so sorry for the audience about the pictures and all the papers behind me. So that the COVID times are certainly something where you can sometimes see people in their personal, so to say, situations. And my situation is now that I'm moving back from Berlin, Germany, where I'm now, to Finland. But let's not focus on that one. So Matti Malkamäki is my name. I have background in the power generation industry. I used to work for Fortum, and then in 2002 established my own first clean tech company. Brought it here to Germany in 2005, and since 2007 been living here. The company that I founded, Aurelia Turbines, in 2013 is the next, so to say, bigger project in my life. So that we started to make industrial small size gas turbines for industrial use, and the hydrogen has been in the DNA of the company and of the technology from the very beginning. So we are actually working together with the DLR, the German Aerospace Center, for the hydrogen technology that what we have, and have been granted for 2 EU-funded projects, one in Bremen area in Vehta, and the other one in Norway, where we are deploying this technology to be used on hydrogen or hydrogen-rich gases. Also, member of the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance Roundtables Energy Group, and also the Finnish Hydrogen Cluster Steering Group. Hydrogen is also quite close to my personal interest, in that sense that I'm founder of a company called Hycamite that makes a thermocatalytic decomposition methane in Kokkola area. And this line here, that what you see in the screen, is actually one of the initiatives that the Finnish Hydrogen Cluster has been started. This initiative was started this spring after a discussion what we had in the cluster, so that how we could make the Gulf of Bothnia or the Finnish hydrogen know-how and the hydrogen possibilities to be more available and more, so to say, seen and understand also here in central part of the Europe. So if I go briefly through this, so that the map, what you see here is the presentation that Gasgrid, the Finnish Gasgrid made in the European Hydrogen Backbone webinar in mid-April. And this is the vision of 2035, where the lines that you see there are the lines where we are thinking that hydrogen could be transported over the hydrogen pipelines. And if you have a look on this area as a total, it is not known for quite a few people but there's a lot of hydrogen users already, like companies, SSAB on both sides of the border, LKAB in Sweden, Kemira, Kokkola Industrial Park in Finland, and so forth. We also have lots of greenhouse gas neutral CO2 available here because we have a lot of biomass plants there. There's more than 20 gigawatts of new wind power capacity plant on this area. I just heard actually this morning in another seminar that Fingrid announced that they have more than 100 gigawatts of new capacity that has been required or asked that whether it can be planned and to be connected to the grid. We also have lots of hydropower and biomass and base power in terms of nuclear power plants as well. So we think that with this developed infrastructure, the Gulf of Bothnia, the hydrogen Bothnia, if you will, can be really a key success for both countries. And we don't forget the Estonia as country as well. Actually, the Estonian hydrogen cluster is already willing to participate this one, and we are highly cooperating. We, for example, had yesterday a webinar with our friends in Poland, and the Polish hydrogen cluster and the Estonian hydrogen cluster were also present there and raised their interest about the joining this initiative.
Thank you, Matti. Guillaume, your introduction, and then let's move into the topics.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm basically part of a European fund called Margaret. We are backed by European institutions such as the EIB, the French CDC, the German KfW, the Italian CDP, and the likes. And our main mandate is to invest in greenfield infrastructure all across Europe. Obviously, energy and hydrogen is part of that. We've already invested in sort of early stage movements of in the industry, like in the early 2010s with the offshore, and later on also back to the digital in the early days. So we're very much keen to be at the forefront of new technologies, and we think that there is a lot to be done on hydrogen. We're also here to support developers in the early days when projects still have to be structured and to take development risk alongside them. So looking forward to a discussion on the topic.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. So we're diving straight into the topics, and I decided that we should maybe start by talking about the emergence of the hydrogen market in Finland and in the Baltics and in the Nordics in general. I will ask you, Herkko, first. You briefly mentioned that you opened the gas markets of Finland by building the Baltic Connector pipeline. What kind of similarities do you see between the opening of the gas market as in terms of bringing a whole new industry in terms of hydrogen into this area?
Well, there's quite a lot of those if I start with such a straightforward statement then. But more back into that issue, then if I go back and how we, so to say, started opening and developing this Finnish gas market there. And the crucial issue was there at how to break this chicken and egg problem, and it all started then with the discussion that should we have LNG stations here in Finland that somehow get connected, otherwise than just having a pipeline to Russia, and then Baltic Connector, the offshore pipeline was the big issue there. But with that we could have a firm network then to the European gas market, and there were lots of doubts in those days there that would this work or not work then, but I would say that the market dynamics, which we were kind of learning then, and how this has worked previously, and it means there that once you have a connection or you have the something that the consumers can choose with, then this gradually brings the liquidity also into the market. And for example, we were comparing the case then with Great Britain and Netherlands there, where there was the gas connection was constructed, but it was in the 90s. And obviously everybody was thinking that the price level in the UK, which was higher than in the Netherlands, would come down there. But what would happen to the Netherlands gas prices? That would they climb up in a way that in order to balance these price levels. Well, surprisingly, then the prices in both countries, UK and the Netherlands, they dropped after this pipeline was opened. And once we opened now Baltic Connector, it was also seen there that the gas market started very dynamically working from the day one. And the prices dropped dramatically there, and Baltic Connector has been now in 100% operation. This has provided now the option for the Finnish gas market there, and I think there's very few people who would say there that this was the wrong way to do it. But there has to be always the icebreaker in these instances, how to go forward with that one then, and you have to have a product in the market that you can sell. And that's how we see it as well there, that if we want to open the hydrogen market, then we have to have the key players in the various instances. First, there has to be this hydrogen, which is in the market, being in the clean or green hydrogen. We can argue with Matti very much on that side and later on then. But the more important issue is there that you have a new product in the market and get that running there, that the customers can make their choices. On the other hand, then there has to be this subsidy-based, so to say, business there, because unfortunately this commercial feasibility is not yet there. But as we have seen very much in the renewable sector there, so when you provide subsidies, being in wind here in Finland in large scale there, or if we take the comparison with the Energiewende in Germany, those has been very successful exercises, and the same is now being applied then also in the hydrogen part. There's lots of these subsidies available, being in the national system then or in the EU scale, and they are all meant there to accelerate the establishment of the working hydrogen market. But you have to have this first key milestones there, which are kind of supporting and the pillars of this market, and then you get this more and more system running. On the other hand, and then I have to stress as well there that there has to be kind of ecosystem thinking behind of that. When we opened the gas market, the first important discussion before Baltic Connect was implemented was the market integration. How we get the Finnish and Baltic gas market functioning jointly there, because if we are only doing it in Finland or in various Baltic countries, that would not happen then in such extent as it is today. And the same applies now with these gas markets. Matti mentioned now this cooperation, having in Swedish and Finnish sides there, possibly also joining with the Baltic countries. I think these are, so to say, the right direction discussions. But on the other hand, I have to say that in a national level, we have to also then see that how we construct these ecosystems, that this will bring something as an entity which formulates and makes up then the hydrogen market. Then, because if we only are working as a single companies in a single direction there, so there are too many of these single directions, and they are not bringing us to the same path there. Okay. So this is something which I see that we are simply following the scope which has happened in the gas market, what has happened in the renewable market.
Okay. Before I let you loose, Matti, I would like a few insights from Guillaume in terms of the points that Herkko was talking about, what you actually need, the building blocks, and what is the investor's take on this?
Yeah, no, thank you, Laura. I think that we have to look at it. I mean, sometimes people believe because it's hydrogen, it's different or whatever. I mean, there's something which is not different. You need to have a business case. What do we mean by that? You need to start with demand. Can you have an offtake, and can it be long enough so that you can actually, as an investor, go and invest into it? Obviously, you need to be competitive, but you need to get an offtake, right? So that's the building block number one, and people will see very quickly that given the experience, as Herke was saying, of the gas sector, an hydrogen purchase agreement is nothing different from a gas purchase agreement, except that the molecule is a bit different. So there's the knowledge already here, and there's existing product, which is gray hydrogen. You just need to find a new product which is competitive. So offtake, number one. Number two, you need for very huge clarity on the regulatory side, especially in the early days where you won't necessarily only have hydrogen, pure hydrogen on dedicated network. You will have a period of time where you will have blending. So you need to get a clear regulation on the guarantees of origin so that this off-taker can show to its market that actually is buying some green hydrogen, for instance. And you also need clear regulation because this is a big market. This is an international market between the transmission system operators so that the molecules can flow under clear rules. So here again, you need clarity on the regulation. And the third building block, because the economics of low carbon hydrogen, let's call it this way, not to get into debate between blue and green, but the economics of low carbon hydrogen today, they're not good enough to compete. You need a little help. You need a focused help. As Elke mentioned, lots of politicians in the different countries have understood that, and they're ready to support, which is super important. But you need focused support, and therefore we need to try and design support mechanisms which make sense and won't stay forever, because the taxpayers cannot pay forever. And I think probably that the CO2 contract for difference, for instance, is a good way to go. And until the time where the CO2 price is not necessarily effective, you have a compensation. And once the CO2 price will reflect the fact that decarbonization costs money, then that compensation will fade away. I think with those different building blocks and a good project developer, you can actually achieve what is needed, which is scale. Hydrogen won't work if you don't reach scale, because it's a competitive market, and without scale, you won't be competitive.
Yeah. Thank you. Matti, we were talking about the sellable product and offtake and demand. Tell us a bit more on the Gulf of Bothnia project. Is there demand? What does the offtake situation look like?
I think that there's definitely a need for hydrogen, so that if you have a look on this area, there's already now, for example, the biggest water electrolyzer in whole of Northern Europe is placed in Kokkola. Quite a lot of big consumers are there. Oulu, Kemira side that has been working with hydrogen since the World War II, more or less. In Luleå, on the Swedish side, the hybrid project that what the SSAB started and has now commissioned, and is also willing to put that on Raahe side. And if you have a look on, for example, on the other new types of business cases, like with the battery production capabilities and so forth, you actually can have a lot of hydrogen demand here. So I don't think that the demand per se is an obstacle here, but I think I fully agree with Guillaume on that one, that the business case has to be there. So if you know for the green hydrogen, if you pay now per kilogram something like between 3.5 euros per kilo, and for the gray hydrogen the industry is paying about 1.5 euros per kilo, then that means that there has to be something to subsidize this price, or you have to do something else. And this actually leads to the regulation markets as well, so that we need to be very clear on the regulation. And I want to go to this green, gray, blue discussion in a bit, in that sense that the regulation as such now seems to be that there's very strong opinions about that it has to be only green, or it has to be only that, or you can't take this and you can't take that. I think that's what we need to have here is open-minded approach. At the end of the day, what matters is that how many CO2 emissions we are delivering from the production of the hydrogen, and that's what matters. On this Gulf of Bothnia area, this is very famous for the wind. So the wind possibilities that what we have here are extremely good, and I really support that we should support that part of the business. But if that means that the pricing for the industry doesn't match, then actually the offtake, I mean the intake or the need from the industry just isn't there. I mean, we will have a sort of chicken and egg situation here, so that which comes first. And this is something that we need to focus, that how to build the need with a competitive pricing, and how to support that hydrogen production. I also would like to raise one point that Herkko mentioned there. He said that this is exactly like the game of renewables was, but honestly speaking, no, this isn't. Hydrogen, the energy use of hydrogen is only a small fraction of it, and I think that the most of the use for the hydrogen will be in the industry. It will be in the industrial processes, and it will be in the make of say synthetic fuels and all this kind of stuff. And there, what matters is that you need to understand that the business case in those end products or in those processes that are making the end products is different than what it is in terms of power production. In power production, you can make feed-in tariffs and something, but if you're making steel, just as an example, you're making green steel or you're making non-green steel, but it's still the same steel. So how do you compare these products? Not only in the first step when you bring them to the market, but also when you're reusing them and so forth. So this all affects to the business case, and this makes hydrogen revolution, if you will, a lot more complicated than it was with the renewables only.
Herkko, any take on the gray part or what Matti said?
Yeah, sure. Pleasure. So indeed, what I was mentioning is there that we have to get the market running with subsidies then. But I fully agree with Matti there that this kind of revolutionary aspect with hydrogen is having then, and the scalability through to P2X solutions is very, very, very different then. And that makes it complicated. But on the other hand, so to say, we should get simple and robust system in the beginning to get it running, and in that respect, I'm also favoring then what Guillaume was saying, this contract for difference mechanism then, because I foresee that would be very simple one then, because it's based on the CO2 prices there, and it fades away then when so to say natural markets get this done. Of course, the tricky question is then what is the appropriate level of setting there, so that what is the limit there, so that would certainly cause huge debates then. But one important aspect, if I want to bring into this discussion, is also the customers there and how they value the hydrogen. Then and I've been talking quite much of this, that when the customers are ready to pay premium on their products, we are seeing now the start of that. The customers are requesting. The steel was a good example, and SSAB has been saying that they are having customers who request that they would have a steel which is manufactured without CO2 in the production process, and more and more you get this into the picture there, not only because of the funding sector, that they're clearly the ESG values has topped already everything. Then on the other hand, so to say, the regulation what we're discussing there. So if you take this week only, how much has happened during this week in this sector? The EU leaders are discussing how to reach the emission targets by 2030 there. What regulation that brings with then? Not to talk about the case Shell there, that they should cut their emissions by the decision of the court. So this change is so dramatic quickly there. But then we have to understand that if we want to have some production, that takes years. So we have to get running now in order to be ready then when everything else and the politicians are ready to say, now we need to have it then a competitive price.
I want to speak to Guillaume a little bit because I think the green discussion also relates, of course, to the volume. So I'll give you a chance to respond on that. And also what I would like you to emphasize or discuss is the timing of the investments. You said that you go in sort of early on because as we all know, you need to start with feed, etc. nowadays before there are any regulatory certainty to a high extent. There are some guidelines. We all know sort of what are the really difficult points, what the regulation will touch upon, but there is no certainty. So any thoughts on this?
I mean, as you say, you can't just basically wait for the subsidy, whatever it is, to say, okay, I'll start the project now. You know, you've got to take some risk, and you've got to be ready to spend the development money to basically craft a project which you believe will attract subsidies, because it's a good project, it's a good business case to start with. That means that probably, you know, 2-3 years of development will have to be spent before you can make the right application. That depends, you know, where you stand. That depends on the type of project, because when we mean hydrogen, it's very vast. You know, if it is for mobility, it's one thing, because the infrastructure could potentially be deployed quickly. If we mean for large pipelines, it's another thing. So again, that very much depends on the initiative. But clearly, you've got to start early. You've got to take the risk, because as Erkko says, you know, from the day you decide to get involved to the day you can actually produce a molecule, years will pass. And in the meantime, CO2 is piling up, okay? Which is why you see already a number of people who are taking that risk, who are taking initiatives across different segments of the hydrogen space, and that's the way to go. But it is important for the different countries to understand that in the meantime, no time can be wasted to design the related support mechanism. You can bring competition in by doing auction, but at some point, people, as you say, Laura, there's an FID decision, and if it's not economical, unless you are potentially an industrial and you know there's a very long-term play, and you can potentially take the risk of going without necessarily getting the economics right. I mean, there's a minimum to that, right? I mean, nobody today can jump into an initiative costing millions and millions without making sure that they can actually make some money out of it. There has to be risks taken early on, but at some point to press on the big button of the big money and launch the construction of the project, you need that final push for the economics to make sense.
Thank you. We are running out of time, so we need to take our final comments, and I'll start with Matti.
You're muted.
Matti, you're muted.
Now again, better. Old-fashioned. So the discussion here has followed quite well on the predicted path, in that sense that we are talking about the regulation, and we are talking about the pricing, and then the scaling up, and then the business cases and so forth. But I have to say that I'm a little bit concerned if we are taking the wider perspective here, so that I've been now participating in quite a few countries and their internal discussions about the future of the hydrogen, especially in Europe. And quite often the case has been so that one of the biggest risks that what we are seeing actually here is the regulation that is coming from the Brussels. And I think that the slowness of the projects, I mean, of course, the people are trying their best and so forth. I'm not willing to say something against it, but seems to be that there's a lot of different interests in place at the moment, and I think that the business case here is so that, or the market case is here so that we need to have clear regulation, as Guillaume said, and we need to have clear understanding that actually the companies and the technology developers can take care about this one in case just the mechanisms are set right. And I would really want to persuade it that way, that the regulation doesn't go or develop into that sense that it actually starts to regulate the technology development as well. It should focus on getting the results, and that's all that matters.
Thank you. Herkko.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah, I fully agree with Matti there that the regulation really plays a key role here, that it enables then the formation of this green hydrogen market. Then, as it has been discussed, then you have to kind of balance with your appropriate business case, but on the other hand, then leaning forward adequately, meaning there that you have to take some kind of risk, because you cannot, so to say, verify the results of the future by Excel or whatever the investors are looking at there. You have to believe in some issues which are happening there, and that's a kind of, so to say, the challenge that we have to overcome there, that how we see that the transition will take place there, how the market will develop there, and on the other hand, so to say, trusting there that there's certainty with the business case, and that is really a challenging equation, and taking into account the regulation which is not yet ready there, and that's a golden egg that we have to crack.
Thank you, Herkko. Gilo, any final thoughts?
Yeah, maybe just taking a bit of a different thought. I hear those days that you could plug hydrogen into any issue, right? You solve the mobility issue for personal vehicle. You solve the plane issue. You solve all the issues, right? I think we've got to be a bit realistic. At some point the economics will play. So there will be many initiatives, a number of which will work, a number of which will fail because they don't make sense economically. I think it is important to focus on the sectors which really need hydrogen, because there's no other alternatives. By definition, those sectors will be good sectors, because that's the way to go. So hard to abate industries, heavyweight mobility, that sort of thing. I think we should prioritize. And also it's a question of priority of funding, because if you apply towards 20 different sectors a defined pot of money, it will bear no result. Versus focusing on the sectors really which could make a difference from a CO2 point of view. I think that this also has to be in the crafting of the support mechanism, and understanding that money is scarce and you've got to focus your resources.
Very good. Wise words from everybody. We are out of time. Unfortunately, I think we could stay here all day and discuss. So very interesting, and looking forward to continuing these discussions on another forum. I thank you all. We will now take a short break, and we will come back with the last panel of today concerning gas market integration.